Hi. Today's word, our first word, is going to be dictionary. I figured that's kind of fitting because we're talking about words and the etymology of words, and a dictionary is kind of one of the places that you usually go to find words and their meanings, which is kind of what an etymology is, although it's deeper than just the meaning of the word. It's kind of like the history of the word. Now, the word dictionary I chose because it's kind of the hallmark of the study of words. You think of studying words, you think of going to a dictionary and looking up the word's meaning. However, the word dictionary is not even based in English historically. It is actually a Latin-based word, which makes sense because we had a lot of time due to the church and due to different occupying, controlling nationalities in England, where Latin was the main way of speaking, at least officially. English was used in more underground circles. But if you wanted to sound smart and educated, you spoke in Latin. Dictionary first shows up as dictionarium, which is a medieval Latin term, around the year 1481. Well, in the year 1481 is the first recorded, published example. Dictionarium. As you can see, this is a compound word with a root, dictio, and suffix arium. The root dictio simply means to speak. It comes from Latin dico. You can see the remnants of this Latin language in Latin-based languages such as Spanish and French. For example, dicer in Spanish means to speak. The last part, arium, the suffix, is a suffix that kind of denotes a place of something. So this word really makes sense if you delve into the Latin. It's pretty simple. It's not hard to extrapolate that dictio arium is going to be a place where speaking is held. In essence, a place where words are gathered, and that is what a dictionary is. I mentioned that dictionary is not actually an English word. And what I mean by that is that it comes from outside of the native original English bank of words. It comes from Latin, and it was borrowed. And there's so many words that have been borrowed into the English language over time. Most of the words that are fancy sounding are words that have been borrowed from French or Latin. Most of the words that are more down, basic sounding, and our grammar and a lot of, prepositions, our basic words that we use are English. If we would have continued to use the English version for dictionary throughout the years, we would now be saying word hoard. Word hoard is also a compound word, word hoard. And if you think about it, they're both English words that we are familiar with. We're very familiar with the word word and the word hoard, which we think of, hoarders gathering stuff together. And this really makes sense because if it's a word hoard, we stick those two words together, we have a place where words are gathered, and that's basically the essence of what a dictionary is. The word hoard was used back in Old English, which is kind of a pre-first, second millennium type of time, like before 1066, basically, before the Normans conquered England. But the word is much older. Word actually dates back to about 6,000 years ago. It is dating back to the Proto-Indo-European languages. All of our Indo-European languages come from a single language that they have branched off of 6,000 years ago. Anything that has spoken pretty much in the Western Hemisphere, and a lot of Middle Eastern things like Eastern Europe, like Greek and Lithuanian and Armenian, Hebrew, Latin, those types of things branched off from this Indo-European original language. And after Indo-European, the next closest step to our English we have today was Proto-Germanic, because English is a Germanic language. And it's believed that before we developed these different branches of Germanic language, like actual Germanic, there was kind of like one whole like language, a parent language that stemmed all of these languages. And as you can see, it's kind of a branching system. So I have a chart here. We have the word, which is what we use now. But you can see that there's actually a lot of different languages that use a similar word. And when you delve into this, it's kind of amazing just how many words have cognates, which means they sound the same in different languages. For example, we have word, coming from Scots, Frisian, which is kind of the predecessor of English overall, and Dutch, wort in German, ord in Swedish. They all stem from the same root word. That word kind of, our modernized word, grew out of. And we can even go back farther. Latin, although it is not a Germanic language, is an Indo-European language. So it stemmed from the same Proto-Indo-European language that the Germanic languages did. And we can see that in verbum, which is the Latin, and vardas, which is even a Lithuanian word that they still speak, stemmed back from some root word back in the day. Even the Greek word for like knowing and thought stemmed from this word. And if we go back even further, we have the Proto-Germanic word warda, and werdo is the Proto-Indo-European word. So you can see it's just a very old word that we have been using for thousands of years, and it's just fascinating to see how it's changed throughout history. And the fact that we kind of dropped word, that term altogether, and went with dictionary just gives a testament to just how strong of a hold the Norman Europeans and the church in general had on the country of England during the medieval times, to the fact that a word thousands of years rooted into the native language was able to be wiped out. The word hoard also, the second part, word originally meant kind of like, or speaking. It's pretty much the same thing. It has different meanings or connotations in knowledge, thinking, thought. A lot of cognates like thought have stemmed from the same word as word. And the second part of the compound word, hoard, is also an Old English word and dates back to Proto-Germanic, about 500 BC. Husda, which doesn't really sound a lot like hoard, but there's been a lot of different pronunciation shifts throughout time that tend to change words in ways that we can trace. So we can trace husda back or forward to hoard. And we can also see cognates in Old Saxon hoard, which pretty much is the same thing, Swedish hudda. And this word basically historically has meant like a treasure hiding place, and a place that you hide something that you feel has inherent value. And it's kind of a testament to the thoughts and the views that these people 1,000 years ago had about words and their language, to give it hoard, which is where they would keep their treasures, and compound that with word. It's kind of like they're treating the words as a treasure, and this collection of words is something that's very important to them. And it just kind of shows how strongly a culture can be connected to their language and how that can really show through. All right, So now you've learned the history of dictionary and what we could be saying, word hoard. I hope you found this interesting. And stay tuned. I will be picking another word sometime soon and giving you a rundown. I hope that this kind of just triggers kind of thoughts about why we say what we say and why we use the words that we use to express the thoughts we do. For example, dictionary has more of a finessed, refined sound to it rather than word hoard. Kind of sounds rough and, kind of more of a not as high class sound and feel to it. And it's just interesting because in the Middle Ages, that's kind of how it was. The upper class was speaking French. The church was speaking Latin, and so the upper class would learn Latin, and they introduced these words as kind of like a barrier to the lower class, the natives who were speaking English. And if you didn't know French, if you didn't know Latin, that kind of just showed your place, and you would probably not be able to move up in society without learning these things. I mean, not that there was a lot of vertical movement in society to begin with back in those days, but it was just kind of another nail in the coffin. They tried, and also to testament to the resilience of English, because they tried to wipe it out, but yet we still use the word today, and it's going just as strong, if not way stronger than it was 1,000 years ago. So thank you.